All right, it is 7:30. I think we're going to go ahead and get started. So first off, everyone who is now tuning in and watching, thank you all so much for joining in. Just going to do a quick intro. First, my name is Jonathan Lucas. I am based in Osaka. I work for the Osaka Convention and Tourism Bureau, but I am also co-chair of the JETAAWJ, the JET Alumni Association Western Japan branch. We are based here in Western Japan, which means everything from Aichi all the way over to Okinawa. So if you are a JET program alumni, congratulations. And if you live in that area, congratulations. You are a member already of the JETAA Western Japan branch. I am co-chair, and then with us today is also my other co-chair, Liv, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hello, everybody. So my name's Liv, as John wonderfully introduced us both. Yes, we are the co-chairs of JETAA Western Japan, and I am based in Kyoto. I work in the hotel industry here in Kansai, and we're all really happy and excited for you to be with us here today, especially our special guest, which we'll introduce in a second. We just wanted to also send a shout out to our treasurer, Rose, who is somewhere out there in the waiting, watching this. Muted. I'm very sorry, Rose. She's there, and we hope you all have a great time. So I'll just pass back to the MC for today.
Yes. All right. Thanks, Liv. So again, we're JETAA Western Japan. Usually our main goal is to network and connect the JET program participants who have finished the program and are in our branch currently living in Western Japan. That is a little bit harder to do during the pandemic. So we've actually decided to launch a webinar series to help people who are maybe still on the JET program, maybe who want to join the JET program, or who are already living as alumni in Western Japan, help you guys get ideas for careers if you want to have a career in Japan, how you can market your skills on the JET program. We want to give inspiration on those things. So we've decided to launch this web series, and this is the very first one. I am very excited because our speaker for this first one is a really close, longtime friend of mine. We've known each other for what, a decade?
Over,
since 2009. Yeah. This is Loretta, also known as KemushiChan on her YouTube channel.
Hello.
So Loretta, thank you again so much for doing this with us. I know you're extremely busy, but
truly my pleasure.
Yeah, Loretta's got a lot of really cool insight. She's done some really cool things in her life and her career. So we are really excited to hear what she has to say. So I'll go ahead and pass it off to you. Oh, and before we begin, I do just want to say one more time, we are going to have a question and answer session at the end of this. So go ahead and write down your questions. And then if you've got any questions as it goes on, feel free to send them directly to Loretta if it's about her stuff. If you got more general questions, feel free to send them to Liv and she'll manage those as well. So you can do that in the chat function. All right, with that, I'll go ahead and let Loretta go for it.
All right, well, thank you so much, John and Liv, for having me. As I don't know if any of the rest of the group knows this, but I was not on JET, so I feel like I'm a bit of a kagemusha. I've Trojan horse snuck right into this fun group today, but I'm excited because one of my biggest wishes when I was getting ready to transition to Japan, and definitely after moving here, was the idea of like, yeah, but how do I actually live here? Like adulting 2.0, how do I actually achieve a life that I actually find worth living, and not just one that's like fulfilling high school me's old dreams, which is cool too. But I always wished I had a support group or a group of people, like-minded people who had great resources, great insight. So I hope that not only today, but hopefully, I don't know, maybe everyone can come back, check out more about the JET, share some more resources, get connected, make the most of this, and definitely use that chat feature to me if you have any questions about what I'm saying, because I'm going to throw a lot of information out there as it comes out of the word pile. So buckle up, and here we go. Okay, so formally again, my name is Loretta KemushiChan. I am a YouTuber by day, by night, and a startup junkie by day. I'm getting lost in the time zones. I do a lot. I wear many hats, as many of us do when we're schlepping it across the globe. So yeah, I have a quick presentation that will kind of ping a couple different topics, and we'll touch on a couple different things that I think we're all kind of excited to hear more about and to chat about together. But in general, if you guys want to hear anything else, or if you want me to dive into something more, please feel free to do so. I usually have a more US citizen focused chat. Being a US citizen, that's really boring about taxes and scholarships and loans and school loans, debt. It's great. I know you guys all want to hear that, but today we'll keep it a little global, a little light. So sit back. Oh gosh, I didn't lose the stream. Sit back, relax, and we'll all have a fun chat today. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. Boop, 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 boop. Here we go. You guys see all that? Sneak peek of upcoming attractions. So can you guys see what I'm looking at? John, do you see my screen?
Yep, we're good to go.
Good to go. Okay, I'm going to full screen it, and then we're going to lift off right into space. Where is the full screen? Somebody help me. There we go. All right, wait, you guys can still see yourself. There you go. All right, so we are ready to go. Today's presentation, as I've called it, out of nowhere, is Working Off the Rails, US and Japan. As some of you guys may know, I am kind of a crazy person. I somehow did not stick to the usual script of what you quote unquote are supposed to do in Japan. And somehow, while having an amazing time doing different experiences, I also fell in the ditch and met a few pitfalls along the way. So I thought this little presentation can run through some of the stories and hacks and tips that I learned while doing that. So these images here are from my YouTube channel. I have this channel here called KemushiChan with all these bright orange and neon colors, where originally it was more of a language focus. This was my channel where I practiced Japanese a decade plus ago, where that's pretty much all YouTube was. It was just a chance to talk, my only chance to talk with Japanese people while I was still in the States and get real feedback. And then it evolved into my life here and the people I met. And then I got sick of seeing my own face. So I've been trying to turn my camera towards other people and do more travel and documentary type stuff. So that's the hodgepodge. Anyways, so yeah, here's the last bit about me. So again, I am a YouTuber. I am also an NHK reporter, and I am a advertising consultant with a number of different companies. So all of this basically happens all the time. I feel like I'm constantly running life background programs. But I would say the main thing that I really do would be somewhere between YouTuber and advertising consultant, which is just kind of like my catch-all name for basically, I do anything and everything for the brands that trust me. And the reason that I'm able to connect with so many brands here in Japan and Tokyo specifically is because of basically just the connections I made while I was a student or while I was still outside of Japan. So surprisingly, I didn't do the traditional find a job and work experience sort of track. And well, it was interesting. So anyways, let's move on. Next slide, please. Come on. Oh, it's not a slide. It's a power. What is it? There we go. Boom. Okay, so how did we get here? So this wonderful little symbol, William and Mary, shout out to America, East Coast, and Virginia. I actually did not do the JET program, as we were saying. I moved to Japan. I did a couple study abroads, but I moved to Japan after 6 years of working in the States. So I graduated college, stayed in the States, and then I moved over 6 years later when I was just about to turn 27 or so. So I know some of us in the audience are not all fresh college grads or what have you. A lot of us are sort of doing different and creative tracks. And, I've heard a lot of questions about how do you move abroad when you're not, supposedly young anymore, which I don't believe, but how do you move abroad when you're kind of seeing a different track or things like that? And so, for example, while I was in New York, I thought I was kind of giving up on my Japan dream, to be honest. I really thought that my time there, while it was going to be fun and while I could obviously find Japanese things, I thought this was maybe just a whole different track that I was taking with startups and sort of like fun app technology. And it turns out I'm still obsessed with Japan no matter where I went. And I started joining groups. I started joining meetup.com groups. I started going to bars, to restaurants, to anything that was Japanese. There's a place called St. Mark's Street. I don't know if anybody knows that in New York. I basically lived there for all of these 6 years. And just basically my friends group was just as Japanese as it was when I was in Japan or when I was living in a Japanese house at William and Mary in college. So these sort of experiences while I was there, they brought the idea to my head that you don't necessarily need to be in Japan working what might seem like a typical job in order to be connected with Japan or connected with your dreams. I worked as a news reporter in New York for a Japanese outlet. I worked a bunch of different jobs that allowed me to basically make my way to N2 while still in the States, N2 JLPT level. And all of this really brought some insight. So for those of you, I want you to kind of keep in your mind, obviously, if you want to come to Japan, there are many ways to do that. If you are in Japan and you want to succeed here, that's amazing. Let's do it. And if you are interested in Japan and Japanese, but aren't necessarily sold on moving here, that's totally okay. And I just want to kind of put that out there, that just remember, it's totally okay. But if you do, I highly recommend personally, obviously, the MEC scholarship. I know you guys are JET people, but I'm just going to plug the MEC scholarship because this was one of the game changers for me. I knew that I wasn't going to move back to Japan unless it made sense. And the MEC scholarship was one of the very few opportunities. This is a government scholarship from Japan at the university, the graduate, the teacher, and there's also a part-time level that allows you to move here. And if you are, for example, the graduate level or higher, you can move here with your spouse. You can move here without it affecting too much of your visa, for example. It's pretty flexible as opposed to other scholarship programs that, for example, won't let you fly home, or maybe they're more stringent and things like that. And while I was on the MEC scholarship, I learned one really cool hack about Japan is that a lot of people don't want to be sold to, and they don't want to, they don't want to give you the time of day unless you're a student a lot of the time. I found that while I was a student is when I made the most really deep connections with a lot of my professional outlets now. And because I was a student and I used my actual thesis to write about small businesses, that allowed me to really stick my foot in a lot of different doors and say, hey, now that we're friends with CEO of this CEO of this tech company or manager of this tech company, et cetera, while I met them at the student level, when it was time to actually swap my visa out for quote unquote a real visa, for a working visa, then I just basically got to cherry pick the ones I liked the most. And I didn't have to do the whole shinsotsu or the hard work that most of us do when we look for jobs. So that humble brag is to say that make connections as soon as possible. If you're on the JET program, I would highly recommend using your resources that are available to you then before you think you need another visa situation. And if you're a student, definitely start talking to people, even if you don't have to write a thesis, just start doing personal projects and find reasons to connect with people and make that into a published article, a YouTube video, a blog, whatever it may be, and it'll really serve you well. My school, I didn't really talk about it too much, but Yokohama National University is where I went to school here in Japan. It's not one that's heard of. A lot of people know Sophia, Keio, Waseda, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of schools. Sorry, those are all Tokyo based. I can hear John frowning. There's a lot of schools that a lot of us as foreigners are familiar with, but there's a whole list right here. I wonder if you guys can see this precious blue list. If you click it, it'll take you to a actual Japanese government website. And let me back out of this. Rather than click on that, I'm just going to open the one I have open. This list is the list of universities. It should be about 300 different universities that award you special points towards the highly skilled visa if you are thinking of pursuing that in the future. I mention this now off the top because there are a lot of different tracks you can do when you're in Japan. But if you by any chance think you're going to do something non-traditional, there's me. For example, if you think you're not going to be in a traditional work 9-to-5 situation, if you think that, for example, you're not going to get married to a Japanese national, if you are part of the LGBTQ community and you think you're going to pursue a different type of lifestyle where you'd like to have permanent residency that you sponsor on your own, if you're just really cool on your own, whatever it may be, I know a lot of people have asked about different tracks and visa tracks that fit a new type of lifestyle that doesn't necessarily fit the mold of marry a Japanese person and get on a spouse visa and then PR. Keep things like this in mind, these lists of which schools, and I'll share this afterwards, which schools, which jobs, which JLPT levels, et cetera, will award you more points, because what these things will do is fast track you towards permanent residency. Because if you do go for the highly skilled visa, it'll award you a lot more perks than a sort of standard work visa. And then once you have that, you can fast track to PR like we were saying, and life gets a lot easier. So I'll send that link later. Hopefully your schools are on here. Whether you already went to them for university or you're looking at one to go through in Japan, these are global schools. So that's a really cool list to have. And you can browse through that later. All right, what time is it? We're still good on time, right? Where were we? Okay.
No rush, totally fine with time.
Thank you. Oh my gosh, it's nice to hear a voice. I hope everyone's good out there. Hi, we have 23 people, I see. Okay, so now quick YouTuber interlude. This is me, and general side hustle tips for the serial hobbyist, SNS addict, and just generally curious people. So like we were saying before, I'm a YouTuber, and I assume that maybe one of you at least watching is interested and or has perhaps thought of starting either YouTube or TikTok or a blog or some sort of thing like that, and are wondering about how that sort of plays into your visa or your Japan life situation. So whoop, whoop. This is a long pile of words, but basically the scene of YouTube and also other social media as well, the scene of YouTube has changed pretty dramatically in the last 10 years. And I just thought I would throw out some quick tidbits of what I've seen in my experience in case you are looking towards it. But the long and short of it, just to basically sum it all up, is that way back in the day, and also in other countries, the way that social media works, especially like Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, usually what happens, for example, if you're an American and you're in the States, I'll just use myself as an example. If I were an American and I was in the States and I was, for example, started posting things on TikTok or Instagram and they did very well, and suddenly I've got advertisers coming in, usually you can just file that as part of your normal taxes, part of a Schedule C personally or through TurboTax or something like that, super easy. And the brands will just pay you or send you merch or whatever it is, and it's pretty straightforward. In Japan, you're not going to see that so much. Recently, in the past year, I would say there's been more of activity that resembles more of like the Western style of influencer marketing and things like that. But in general, the way that YouTube and social media in general works in Japan is that there's definitely more of a middleman and agency aspect to it. So you're going to see a lot of what it used to be that an agency would take a cut so that they could sort of manage your taxes and your money, and that would keep your taxes correct. And you'll notice me talking about taxes a lot, but anyways, and that's how it used to be in Japan. But recently, there's been a lot more freedom where the brands are used to just basically saying, hey, we want to buy out your channel for one time and we want to pay you for it. And they'll just kind of throw whatever amount of cash at you. And then you wonder, well, what do I do about my taxes? I'll just say it off the bat, pay your taxes if said thing ever happens, if you ever do an influencer marketing or affiliate marketing type of thing. But in general, just be kind of careful, because it's not like it's going to be back home where you can easily, for example, set up a PayPal account or an online banking account and just instantly kind of manage all that. And your tax implications and how you get paid will really affect your job, your full-time job, your visa, and your overall ability to stay in Japan in the very long term. So if you are looking at social media and it is monetized, have fun, do what you love and have fun with your brand. Just be kind of mindful to make sure that you're always dotting your I's and crossing your T's. And at this point, actually using an agency or having a manager is actually pretty helpful, because they kind of work as a catch-all umbrella to make sure that your taxes get filed correctly before you ever get paid. So in that way, there's kind of like a plus and minus to it. So if you guys have questions about YouTube or social media stuff, feel free to put it in the chat. There are 3 chat questions already. Wow, amazing. Okay. Okay, so we're going to scroll down here. So this is just more of the same thing, sort of the mood of what's changed on YouTube that I've noticed. Really a lot more personal brands. There was a lot in the past. There was more of people, well, actually, I don't know. We can get into this later, but basically YouTube used to be very, I mean, we all remember it used to be very like kind of nitty gritty sketch comedy fun. And then it got very professional. Suddenly everybody had an intro, an outro, a sponsorship, et cetera, et cetera. And then these FTC guidelines coming in where everyone had to explicitly say this video is sponsored by so-and-so before your audience gets mad. And then recently there's kind of been a breakdown of all that where, you know, YouTube isn't necessarily reliable. A lot of social media brands aren't that reliable as much in terms of getting paid as much anymore. So what we've seen again is just a lot of people being very authentic and being very personal online. And that's great. But for Japan, again, I'm just going to throw out a couple tips. Be very careful about walking the line between authenticity and doxing yourself. So for example, in Japan specifically, saying things like where you work specifically, where you go to school specifically, what visa you currently are applying for, or if you have a spouse or boyfriend or girlfriend, what visa they're on, or even if you're walking around and you're just doing a live stream. One thing you may not notice, I should have put an image here, but the street poles in Japan, in kanji, they'll have your address of every block that you're walking by. And it's usually in a blue or green, like big placard sign. And if you haven't paid attention to it, I know kanji is like, oh, we normally block it out because why do kanji on a Tuesday, right? That actually can dox you pretty quickly. So it's fine, obviously, if you're just hanging out. But the moment you, for example, run into trouble, perhaps if there's a child in the video and the parents are mad about that, if you say something about your school or your job or et cetera, if anybody ever sees that, and for some reason they always do, I'm telling you, it's weird. It doesn't matter how big or widespread your channel is, people somehow, they always find you. And it's not the ones you want to find you. Just be careful what you say, because the internet lasts a lot longer than your personal conversations. And I'm saying this mindfully as we're literally, you know, having this conversation as well. But yeah, just be careful. AKA in Japan, do not dox yourself, and just be smart and have fun. Be authentic, be personal. Don't dox yourself. I'm going to just say it, move on. Okay, and then just in general, this says, should my brand start a YouTube channel? Let's just say, should I start a social media channel in general? In general, if you are thinking, I want to do something on the side while I'm in Japan, I want to share my experience, I want to possibly start a side business, definitely go for it. But there are sometimes YouTube or the things that seem the most popular aren't the best outlets. So I've noticed, for example, YouTube especially, you have to have regular shareable content. I'm pretty bad at this recently, but luckily I have a very nice audience who is sweet enough, a community that's sweet enough to support me when I'm not posting, excuse me. But in general, you have, for YouTube and a lot of bigger social media, you have to have regular shareable content. You generally want to have a nice personality that makes people want to be like you and want to be around you more, and you have to have time. So just be aware of that. And for Japan, I'll add the caveat of you have to be not doxed again. So just be careful of that. And you know, if you don't want to start a YouTube channel, there are many other things you can do. For example, sometimes starting a blog, starting a community, or just being part of a Facebook group. For example, this JET group that we're all, some of us are as guests and some of us as Jets, that worked. We're sitting here and having I would think the pleasure of connecting with other people. There are lots of groups. Don't be afraid to look at meetups after Corona, and other groups and network opportunities just like this one today. If you want to connect, but you don't necessarily want to put yourself all the way out there, there are ways to do that and to share information without having to do, for example, a YouTube channel. But if you want to, go ahead and shoot me a message. I'd love to see your channel. Okay, next. How are we on time, John? I can't see my clock this way.
It is 7:55, so we're still good.
Okay, next, let's get to what you really want to hear then. Okay, now loading. Day job and visa hacks. General tips and hacks for every single one of you, because every single one of you will probably benefit from hearing this. Okay, so before we even get into any of this, you see right there, the little typo at the bottom, for Jets and for students, specifically, like we were saying earlier, network early. I really want to hammer this in. I don't know, I can't see your hands, but I'm just going to pretend that I can see all of you right now. Raise your hand if you would classify yourself as an introvert, or as a person who's shy, who doesn't want to get out there or is scared to speak Japanese? Raise them up. Raise hand. Nice. My hand. I have 2 hands up. If you are usually a shy person or you don't want to, get out there, think of your time in Japan, think of your time on JET, think of your time as a student as a game. Think of it as a boss level game. And this is your time to collect items before you really have to level up and get that next visa. I know for a lot of my friends who were JET alumni and alumna, their time after JET, it was kind of the question of what do I do next? And figuring out what you do next when you need a visa is so hard, because that's when you start making choices that affect your entire life just because you need a visa. And that's a really kind of crappy situation to be in. So while you're the moment you get your visa, just start thinking about what you want next and start talking to people, start getting into meetup groups, start getting into communities. Oh my gosh, Basil, please. Pet groups, pet loving groups, whatever it may be. Start networking with people the moment you're sitting on solid ground. And if you're outside of Japan, for example, if you're not even coming to Japan and you're just happy in your community, but you want to speak some Japanese, start networking where you are. I found that some of the most successful moves and successful connections I made with people were made before I even moved here. And that really made everything smooth. So just remember, network early. And if you can, try to remember people's names and their faces and their birthdays. It's just, Facebook is great for that. But for work people specifically, just try to send people messages now and then if you really want to connect with them. And that's a great way to land yourself a job in 5 years when you weren't even looking for it. So scrolling down again. Okay. Hack number 1, pay all of your taxes on time. I'm going to say this one more time. Pay all of your taxes on time. I know this sounds incredibly boring and I'm a YouTuber. What am I saying? I am coming at you with some real truth right now. If you are coming from your home country, pay those taxes too. We've seen the last 2 years, for example, with COVID and things like that, if not keeping up with your home filings and your paperwork can vastly affect the services that are available to you, not only as a citizen, but also as an expat. And here in Japan specifically, this is one of the easiest ways to destroy and obliterate all the work you've done to move or live here. So for example, if you work at a full-time job, if you're a seishain, or I'm not sure of the JET situation, but if you are usually in a normal work situation, your taxes are usually, I want to say, more or less handled for you. So you don't see so much of health insurance, social insurances, and things like that. But if you are, for example, a freelancer or anything else, you have got to stay on top of your taxes. And I say this now because, for one thing, when you re-up your visa, if you haven't been paying your Nenking, your health insurance is kind of okay, but we won't say that. Pay your health insurance. All of your taxes, and specifically your resident tax. You pay your income tax at the spring of every year, and then you have your resident tax that you pay kind of at the prefectural or the city level. If you don't pay those, it's going to bite you in the butt, probably around the time that you're thinking, okay, it's 10 years, I need permanent residency. That's going to be the saddest thing, especially because 2 years ago, right before COVID went fully crazy, they really tightened the laws specifically because of activities of students, and specifically about because they were changing the permanent residency tracks. They got really strict about taxes, in that I've heard multiple people say, not only do they want the form that you get at your city office that shows you paid taxes, some of them sometimes want to verify the actual convenience store pay stub where you paid your resident tax to see that you actually paid it on time. So keep your actual pay stubs of everything, keep it a nice, wonderful file and everything for as long until you move out or stay or whatever it is, but pay all of your taxes. Okay, next. Next. Okay, jobs, pays, visas. Oh my. So we have 2 things. On the left, I wanted to touch on the idea of being a local hire versus a lateral move. So most people think when you move to Japan, you will move here and basically become what more or less is basically called a local hire. So even if you got a visa before you moved here, things like becoming a translator or becoming an English teacher, et cetera, et cetera. There are a lot of different jobs that are available here, and we'll talk about, the nitty gritty of how hard they are to get. But when you're a local hire, yes, it's easier to update your visa while you're here. And yes, it's actually easier to sort of connect with people here, because usually jobs won't give people abroad the time of day. However, I don't want you to forget that the idea of a lateral move is a very lucrative and wonderful option to you if you think about it. So for example, like I did, I spent 6 years in New York before I even came to Japan. I actually worked with Japanese companies, and one of them, for example, a publisher, I interviewed for them, and I want to say I was definitely getting towards the end of the interview process, but they didn't give me the job because they found out I was a YouTuber, and they were like, oh, well, that's not going to work. Found out afterwards, after moving to Japan, I met their boss here in Japan, and he's like, oh my gosh, we should have totally hired you. And it was like this whole funny conversation. But the things that I learned meeting these companies on both sides in New York and in Japan is that you will get paid so much more, usually, if you start, for example, with the same Japanese company on your home side and then get moved over. So don't be afraid to do things like look at a big city near you, or look at a Japanese company that has a branch in Tokyo or in Japan, in Japan, and also in your home country. And you can do that easily just by, in whatever your home language is, English or whatever, just Google Tokyo, I keep saying Tokyo, whatever city it may be, Japan, and your home city office, and type those city names and office in Japanese, and see what companies start coming up. There are a lot of big industries. For example, in the US, patent law, corporate law, publishing, licensing, and big machinery are huge industries. I've mentioned this before. Corporate and patent law sound pretty intense, and they are, and finance should also be up there as well. But the patent and licensing field specifically, these are the things that a lot of people don't think of, but all that wonderful anime, all those movies, all those things that get imported to you back home, all those wonderful names and brands that back home go through patenting, licensing, trademark law, etc. And you don't necessarily have to be a lawyer or even a legal professional to work at these companies. You can just work at these companies and work with your favorite brands and get a really sweet pay. And usually jobs like that will land you with the opportunity to move somewhere like places like Hibiya, Ginza, and Tokyo. That's where a lot of the patent and licensing offices are. Excuse the pupper. Okay, and then on the right side, we have the two different visa options that we're looking at mainly. The main engineer, specialist in humanities, international services, this long thing is one visa, or the highly skilled professional. I'm looking at these two specifically, but there's, of course, obviously, there are many visas, many visas you can look at, and they all have different perks. I just want to point out really briefly that the two that I've had, or three, I've been on a student visa, this top one, the engineer and specialist humanities international services. And I also am now a holder of the highly skilled professional visa. And what I've learned is that if you are specifically a hustler, if you have many hobbies, or if you're thinking of starting a business, there is a really hard choice between, do I want to go the work visa route and maybe do contracts on the side? There is no such thing as a freelancer visa. I'm just going to let you know that right now. There is no such thing as a freelancer visa. However, you can build your own visa as a freelancer with multiple companies under the engineer, specialist, humanities, international services visa. And that actually worked really well for me. It's very flexible, and they let you do basically anything within the realm of this humanities and international services. However, what you can't do is actually start and run a business as a business. You can file, but you can't actually run as a business, because once you do that, you have to switch to an actual business visa or be a spouse or PR or something like that. On the highly skilled professional visa, this one sounds great. And like we said, it has a lot of perks. It's the 5-year visa. It gets you fast track to PR in 1 year if you paid your taxes. And there are other perks as well. So if you're thinking of starting a family, you can bring your parents or someone that you trust to help raise your child. That's a great perk if you're out here schlepping it alone. And there are other perks as well that just make it really, really attractive to people, especially people who don't want to spend 10 years working at the same company. So it's kind of like a trade-off. Like for my case example, I could be a freelancer on the Engineer International Services and Humanities visa for 10 years, usually getting about 1 year at a time, or I could switch to the highly skilled professional and get PR in 1 year. And yeah, for 1 year, I'll kind of have to boil everything down. But then once you switch to PR, you can go back to, you know, everything you were doing anyways. So they're trade-offs on both ends. And you just kind of have to figure out what's best for you. But I've recommended my lawyer. I love my lawyer. She's amazing. She's like, I don't know how she deals with me. And I have a video, if you are interested in that, we can chat about that later. But yeah, just keep your eyes out there, keep your eyes open. And remember this point over here, what else besides Japan? You don't have to work in Japan to work with Japanese stuff. Just, you know, if pay is what you're after, maybe Japan isn't where you want to be. Maybe it is. You let me know. Okay, one more time. Pay all of your taxes on time. You guys still with me? I hope you guys are repeating it with me. Pay all of your taxes on time. I'm just going to say it over and over and over again. That's pretty much all I had to say about that. John, I know you were hoping for more of a story. I'm not going to give you any story. Just
that's okay.
Pay all of your taxes on time.
Yes, it works for itself.
And so this one quick caveat, this is very daunting. I know a lot of people, when you move to Japan, the first thing that you'll get within about a week or two is a stack of papers that are asking you to pay for stuff for social security, for health insurance, etc. And I remember I was a student literally making no money at that moment. And I was like, you already want my money? I don't even, how is this a thing? So I say pay all of your taxes on time, but there's also a caveat. If you cannot pay your taxes on time, or you're a student, or you're just getting settled, do not be afraid to go to your actual city or ward office and tell them that you can't pay your taxes. If you do that, then you're good, because then you fill out forms, and there's this thing called menjo, MEN, well, that's written in English, but menjo is the nice, I forget the word in English at the moment. It's a deferment, I want to say. Basically, you're signing a form waiving or asking for a forbearance. That's a good word. You're asking for help to pay for these things. And I know it sounds so boring, but I promise you, you're going to need to pay these things or fill out paperwork. Yay, Japan. That's the fun stuff, but it's the real stuff that'll keep you living your dream life. So yeah, that's basically it. And more importantly, more than anything, have fun. Japan is so fun. It's like totally awesome. And I honestly, as much as I know I talked about a lot of nitty gritty, boring stuff today, my life in Japan truly has been a dream come true. And I feel incredibly fortunate to be able to not only live it, but to share it with people. And I'd trade maybe 3 seconds of it, but the rest of it I'd keep forever. So yeah, have fun, make the most of it, pay your taxes so you can have even more. And yeah, so let's get to chatting. I'm going to stop sharing. Kaboom. Let's open up the floor. Look at all these people. Hi.
All right. Well, first, I just want to say, Loretta, thank you. That was a lot of really good detailed information that I don't think people usually get into that, like the specifics of visas, what you can do with it and how you can get there. A lot of people don't get into that with these information sessions.
It'll make and break you.
And then the taxes point. People gloss over that a lot of the time, but it's really important. And then, yes, you made a good point. You've got to, depending on where you're from, you've got to pay your taxes back in your home country. Depending on the rules, that's the US rule. We got to pay taxes there too. But then of course, like taxes are so important here. You'd be surprised how many horror stories I've heard of people like, I didn't know how to pay this. They sent it to me in the mail 3 times. I didn't know how to pay this.
It was red.
Yes, it was in red text, but I didn't know how to pay it. So yeah, very important points. Thank you. Just one big point that you mentioned that I really want to emphasize. You said it 2 times. You said make connections and make connections early.
Yeah,
it is. That's the most important thing. In fact, that's why this organization, JETAAWJ, exists. We're here to serve as that connection pool for JET alumni. So if you listening right now, you're a JET alumni and you want to connect for your career, for what you want to do next. If you're on JET and you're not quite sure what the next step's going to be, that's why we're here. That's why the JET Alumni Association is here. So reach out to us. I think a lot of you found this link through the Facebook page. So find us on Facebook and connect with us there. I think we might go ahead and ask if you want more materials, you can email, or you can send us your email address in the chat. If you'd like, we can reach out to you later on that way. But for now, I think we should move on to the question portion. Loretta, you said you had a few questions earlier.
Yeah, let me see really quickly. At least two questions asking about YouTube content specifically and about making connections. So this one specifically is saying, basically, so my audience is basically Japan and America. And this person is saying that their potential audience is mostly American. And how do you actually connect with the Japanese audience? So the question was, should I just go there and start connecting early in Japan? Yes, but no, specifically, this sounds really straightforward, but the easiest way to gain a Japanese audience is to occasionally do a video in Japanese if you can. They really like the so-and-so foreigner speaks Japanese. Like people love like Jiko Shokai. If you just put Jiko Shokai and it's like a new, fresh, happy looking face, Japanese people love clicking on that and cheering for his new face in the game. But specifically, something so simple, what is it called? The titles on YouTube are regionalized. So you can pick an English facing title and a Japanese facing title and just change the Japanese title to be something Japanese. Because if you change your English title also to just be Japanese, then your English audience probably won't click it. I've learned that as well. So usually you have to regionalize. The English facing audience sees this title, whatever it may be. And then the Japanese audience sees this one, whatever it may be. And then the actual video, if you can, and maybe this will like boost you right up into N2, subtitle that video in Japanese. I would highly recommend adding, even if it's just basic subs, or while you're talking, if you want to practice and like interrupt yourself with Japanese. That's the easiest way to get Japanese people to start watching. And then they like a lot of foreigner reacts type of stuff. I say. Who's this they? I have found that the Japanese people I have met like this foreigner reacts type of content. So that's fun. How do you think? And then one more question. You talked about taxes a lot. If you have a spouse visa already, but you hope to pursue YouTube, how do you think that'll affect my visa status? So the spouse visa is kind of like a free for all. You can almost do anything but float. It's pretty awesome. But the idea of how do you actually pay taxes on it, I don't know. Oh, I think you said you're American. I think you said you're American. I don't want to like necessarily say too much and like say too much that I shouldn't say, but look into your options. If you are American, you're on a spouse visa, you don't necessarily pay taxes somewhere, but you don't have to necessarily do it where you think you might have to. But just pay taxes somewhere. And I'll just leave it like that. Talk to an accountant. I highly recommend talking to an accountant on both sides. And yep. Somebody says, is it okay? Sorry, last question. Somebody asks, is it okay not to be the face of my own channel? Yes, that used to not be the case. It used to be that if you like were an avatar, like if you're in a, I don't know, a gaming community or something, that's great. And people are fine with that. But usually people expect to see you and your face. And if it's just a voiceover and text on the screen, it's not going to work. It's like YouTube, not TextTube. But recently I found that there's a lot of content. People really like this like crafting content where it's just your hands, and they specifically don't want to see you. They don't want to hear you. They don't want none of that noise. They want to see your actual craft that you're doing with your hands. So if it's like practicing kanji and it's just your hands, like a study YouTube thing, that's a thing. If you like, I don't know, repairing cars, like get in there with the nuts and bolts, and you don't have to show your face. It's totally fine. Whatever your actual channel is focused on, just like you can focus the camera on that and it's okay. And what is the worst advice you've received? This has just popped in. The worst advice I've received. I'm going to sound like a broken record, but the worst thing I've ever heard is people saying like, oh, you don't need to learn Japanese, and once you leave America, you don't have to pay your taxes. Like that type of stuff is just like, oh gosh, I pity you in 5 years when you move back. There's just like, don't set yourself up for failure. And I would say the opposite. I highly recommend learning even just a little bit of Japanese. You don't have to be crazy fluent or anything, but just enough to do what you want to do and kick some butt, you know? So that's it for comments from me so far.
All right. I also did not receive any questions. Liv, did you get any?
Sorry, everyone. Still muted. Hi, hello, there I am. Yep, so a couple of you have sent through some things about getting resources, either from JETAAWJ or from Loretta. So I will make sure if anyone wants Loretta's resources, I'm sure we can get them and send them through to you. I'm sure Loretta's all good with that. Either the university list, any kind of visa info. I'm sure Loretta has all that information ready, or will have that ready.
Should I drop the link in the chat now to the university list, just in case some people want to grab it now? Can you see that?
Yeah, so you can send a message to everyone in the chat, so that should go through. If there's anything you guys wanted specifically, or you wanted to know more about JETAAWJ, we do have an email address, so get your pens and papers ready. It's JETAAWJ@gmail.com. So you can send an email through there and learn more about us, connect with us. As I'm sure you're all interested in here, all want to hear about Loretta, but if we're always, if you want to connect more with us, more with Jet alumni, we're always looking for we're always looking for people to help out. We're always interested to hear what you guys want to have more speakers about. We're always interested to hear what you guys want to actually do now that you're alumni or about to be alumni, what kind of career advice you want, whether you want more speakers as amazing as Loretta has been, and all this kind of thing. So we're always looking for more ideas, so feel free to reach out. Thank you. I believe John just sent the email through the chat, so feel free to go and scroll through there. If you have any other questions, feel free to email that through to the email address for me. And I think that's all from my end. This will be as you guys probably are aware, this is being recorded. We will post it up later for you guys to view at a later date.
All right. Thanks, Liv. Cool stuff. And then thanks, Loretta, for sending that list through. I actually just got a question just in here really quickly, so thank you for sending me some love. It was just a quick question about Osaka. So good listening skills earlier on. You know that, yeah, I'm based in Osaka. I work in the Osaka tourism industry. This person just asked how it's been recently, and I'm assuming you mean like the pandemic and everything. I've been in Osaka for 2 years now. So I arrived at the tourism bureau like 6 months before the pandemic really hit. So I didn't have much of a chance to really get on board with the industry and everything before it really got bad here. Yeah, it's not easy. It's not tough, but it's funny. I was just talking with Liv earlier. So Liv, of course, works in the hospitality industry, but still a key part of tourism. We were just talking about how there's no tourists, but we still seem to be busier than we ever have been before.
Yeah.
It seems like with no tourists in here to churn the wheels, we have to work extra hard to churn the wheels ourselves to make sure that things are still running smoothly. So right now in my job, I'm working with a lot of behind the scenes stuff. The Tourism Bureau is pretty active in the Osaka prefectural and city governments. We're trying to get things moving behind the scenes, get good policies in place so that when tourists come back, it's a much more smooth experience. So even though there's no tourists specifically, there's still a lot of work to be done in the industry in general. So yeah, the pandemic has done a lot to damage the industry, but there is still a lot to be done. So don't let that dissuade you from tourism in general. Cool. If that answers your question.
Yeah. I'm glad John got a question. Thank you.
I just got a question I want to throw at you. You being John.
Oh, hey, yes, go ahead.
So somebody asked me specifically about how to stay motivated with Japanese after passing N1.
Oh,
Ooh.
oh.
Congrats, by the way.
Yes, good
Ah.
timing. Thank you. Yeah, so good question. I actually just passed N1 with this test in July, so yay, thank you. Oh,
What are
that's
you
a
doing
fun
now?
question. I'm actually not focusing on Japanese language study itself. I'm taking grad classes now on how can I apply that Japanese language study. So actually I'm taking online grad classes through Temple University on business translation and science translation. So using my N1 skills, how can I better apply that? So that's what I'm doing.
I agree.
What would Loretta say?
The same.
Yeah,
you have to start applying it. I like, you know, I know it looks like I'm starting with a lot of textbooks back there, but these are all lies. Like I don't touch textbooks. I have not touched textbooks in the longest time. I think once you start passing N2, you have to start like reading all the time and translating all the time. And once you pass N1, you really have to start reading and translating the things that you actually like or want to excel in. So like I did a lot of like Photoshop and Illustrator classes in Japanese. Like I know how to use them already, but I just wanted to like relearn this. So I wasn't like, now squish the image between the layers, or like, you know, I wanted to know like the actual like compress and render. Forgot them all, but that's my journey. So yeah, I would say definitely start finding your niche and start taking classes in it, because that's really fun. Apply.
Find your niche. That's a good call for it. Cool.
All plateaus, I would say that. Find a niche and find a way to apply it.
You are just so full of a lot of good language learning advice. I've actually followed you, I mean, for this full decade that I've known you. So your YouTube videos are just full of like really good advice.
I swear I'm just regurgitating all of my good professors. Like there's this one professor from Brown University who taught at Doshisha in Kyoto. And she changed my life. Like she straight up was like, what are you doing? Like I didn't realize that there is an actual method to learning how to speak, and not just like we all know what textbooks look like, unfortunately. But when you think of speaking, you think it's just like a piecing together something you saw in a textbook. You never think of the speaking element of itself as its own curriculum, really. And she had us go through like, this week we're working on rebuttals, and next week we're working on like getting in an argument, and next week we're doing like it was really more situational. And then it was changing who you're talking to when you're doing these different situations, and a lot of like try to do that without using that word ever again, and just really like pushing yourself out of your boundaries. So that was a real pain right in the bunion. But it worked.
All right, thanks, Loretta. I got a couple of direct questions to me. We are running short on time, so I'm going to go ahead and say these will be the last two questions. A little bit while ago, someone actually asked me, I don't have experience with that, but hopefully someone else here does. If there's any experience, I keep losing the question, working remotely for an international company while living in Japan. Ooh. So working for a US company while living in Japan.
It's a nope.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I actually don't know of anybody who does that. The only thing I can think of is if you work for a US company that's based in Japan, but during the pandemic you happen to work from home. Yeah, that's the only case I can think of. But
I do, but they're usually the people who do it correctly. They work for really big firms and they have multiple branches, so they're able to manage the tax situation. And the people I know who otherwise work remotely while in Japan, you're not supposed to do that if you're not on a work visa. Just making sure that's clear. But those people usually, they would like, for example, stay in an Airbnb for like 6 months or something and like code. And that like, that was like they would summer in Japan and like code. Not endorsing anything, just, you know, be careful.
Throwing out there some people's personal stories. Yeah,
just stories.
All right. So sorry, we're not able to give like specific advice about that, but
be careful.
Yeah, be careful. That's a good thing. And then I'm going to go ahead and go with this is the last question. It's a good question. For those of us not at the N1 level, is there a JETAAWJ resource for community classes in Japan? As far as I'm aware, there is not. However, Liv is raising her hand.
No, and Mimi, I haven't passed N1 yet. It's the mokugyo of this year. A community resource is something I would love to have and something I would love to work on. If there are any people out there either watching with us now or who are watching this later who are interested in building something like that, it would be great. But I think the best way is to just, as Loretta said, as John said, as everyone says, find what you like doing and study Japanese that way. But there are probably some resources that people do know about, and hope we can share them later, hopefully.
Okay. And then about that, actually, to prepare for the N1, I'm just going to throw this out there. I did Google search and I just looked for things that were around me. And I actually found there's the YWCA. It's near Umeda Station here in Osaka. They've got great into N1 prep courses. They were a little expensive, but I decided to go ahead and save up and just throw the money at that. And it was well worth it because, I mean, I passed. So obviously it did something. So just look around you for community centers, local institutions that may offer it. It's tough if you're working full time. If you're on the JET program, it's a little bit easier, since usually if you're an ALT on the JET program, time's a little bit easier. But yeah, hopefully that works for you.
I work really irregular hours. Wait, am I still muted? No, I'm here. So I'm good. So I found Italki is really helpful, but that is not, you can find teachers who do work, do teach JLPT specific classes, I believe, but I don't know how good, I can't actually verify any of that. You need to really find something that works for you in your work schedule.
Good. All right, thank you all. And then, sorry, someone just threw in a last comment here. The college courses I was talking about earlier, that's Temple University. It's an American university, but they're really famous because they have the oldest running US university Japan campus. They've got a Tokyo campus and a US campus. They have a continuing education course series where you can get certificates. I'm taking the business translation and interpretation courses, but you can sign up. They've got great English education courses, business administration courses. You can go ahead and check that out. It's Temple University. All right, so we have no time left. This meeting is about to end. So I want to take this last few seconds to just say again, Loretta, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. You are I'm just gonna say you're a very cool person, and the stuff you do is very cool. So the fact that you took the time to do this and gave your personal advice, very concrete advice about this.
I hope so.
So yeah, thank you so much, Loretta.
Thanks for having me, and good luck, everybody. Oh gosh. Live that life.
Live that life. Go for it. That's amazing. Let's do it. You said that earlier and I loved it. Thanks, Loretta. All right, and then the last point, again, we are the JET Alumni Association. If you are a JET alumni and you live in anywhere between Aichi Prefecture and Okinawa Prefecture, congratulations, you're automatically a member. If you want to get more involved, we are always looking for volunteers to help run events whenever in-person events can happen again, come with ideas and stuff and things like that. So go ahead, shoot us an email, contact us through Facebook, anything. We're here to connect with you guys. And again, reiterating Loretta's point, connect early and connect often. That's why we're here. Make use of us.
Couldn't have said it better. We're also newly on LinkedIn, so check us out on there.
Ooh,
yes, LinkedIn. Oh yeah, that's a good point. Use LinkedIn. It's a great resource.
Let's get linked.
On that note, the meeting is about to end. Thank you, everybody.
All right. Thank you all for joining us.
All right. Bye. See you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.